If the world were a marketplace, most countries would compete on size, some on speed, some on force, but one country competes on something far more fragile: trust. Welcome to Switzerland, the country that turned neutrality into a business model, silence into a product, and stability into one of the most profitable assets on earth. For centuries, while empires collapsed, currencies failed, and wars rewrote borders, Switzerland did something unusual. It stayed still, not passive, not weak, but deliberately unchanged. When money doesn't feel safe, it flows here. When governments fall, assets hide here. When the world panics, Switzerland gets richer. No oil, no global army, no colonial empire, yet it became one of the richest countries per capita in human history. So the real question isn't, how did Switzerland get rich? The real question is far more uncomfortable. Why does the world trust Switzerland more than it trusts itself? In this episode, we're not talking about chocolate, watches, or postcard mountains. We're breaking down Switzerland as if it were a company. Its founding strategy, its core product, its revenue streams, its risk management, and the cracks now forming beneath its perfectly polished surface. Because trust, once lost, is the hardest asset in the world to rebuild. And for the most trusted company on earth, that may be the biggest risk of all. This is Switzerland, the world's safest company. To understand Switzerland, you don't start with banks. You start with fear. In the heart of Europe, surrounded by empires, Switzerland was never the strongest, never the largest, and never able to win a continental war. So it made a decision most countries never do. It stopped trying to win. In 1815, after Europe nearly destroyed itself under Napoleon, Switzerland was formally recognized as permanently neutral. But neutrality wasn't a moral stance. It was a strategy. By refusing to choose sides, Switzerland positioned itself as something far more valuable than an ally. A safe zone, no invasions, no foreign bases, no ideological crusades. While other nations burned money on armies and colonies, Switzerland invested in infrastructure, education, and institutions that outlasted governments. Neutrality did something even more powerful. It made Switzerland predictable. And in a chaotic world, predictability is priceless. Merchants could trade here. Diplomats could meet here. Gold could sleep here. Even enemies trusted the same vault. Over time, neutrality became more than foreign policy. It became the brand. If Switzerland were a company, this was its founding principle. We will not be exciting. We will not be fast. But we will still be here when everyone else is gone. That promise turned mountains into borders, borders into stability, and stability into money. By the time the 20th century arrived, Switzerland had already solved the hardest problem in economics: how to make the world believe you're safer than the world itself. And once that belief takes hold, everything else becomes easier. Trust is not a feeling, it is an economic multiplier. When people trust a system, they accept lower returns, wait longer, and ask fewer questions. Switzerland understood this earlier than anyone else. While other countries sold growth, Switzerland sold certainty. Its courts were boring. Its contracts were enforced. Its rules changed slowly, if at all, and that slowness was the point. Money doesn't chase excitement. It hides from danger. So as revolutions swept Europe, as currencies collapsed, as borders shifted overnight, capital learned a simple rule: When in doubt, move to Switzerland. Trust turned into pricing power. Swiss banks could charge higher fees. Swiss companies could pay higher wages. Swiss debt could borrow cheaper. Even the Swiss franc became a product, a currency people bought, not to spend, but to sleep better at night. Trust also compounded. Because Switzerland was trusted, international organizations chose it as neutral ground. Negotiations happened there. Agreements were signed there. The country became the meeting room of the world, and every meeting reinforced the same message. This system works. If Switzerland were a company, trust would sit on its balance sheet as the most valuable intangible asset. Hard to measure, impossible to copy, easy to destroy. And Switzerland built its entire economy around protecting that one asset. But trust has a dark side. The more the world relies on you to hide things, the more it expects you not to ask why. And that quiet tension would eventually define Switzerland's most famous industry. Swiss banking did not begin as corruption, it began as protection. In a continent defined by confiscation, where new regimes erased old elites overnight, Swiss banks offered something radical. Your assets would remain yours, no matter who won the war, no matter who lost power. Bank secrecy laws, formalized in the 1930s, were designed to protect citizens from authoritarian governments and political revenge. At least that was the theory. And for a long time, it worked. Money flowed in not because it was illegal, but because it was afraid of inflation, afraid of revolution, afraid of exposure. Silence became a service, and silence scaled extremely well. Swiss banks didn't need to chase clients. The world came to them. Royals, industrialists, refugees. Later, dictators, criminals, and sanctioned regimes. The same vault that protected victims also protected abusers, and the Switzerland chose not to ask where the money came from, because asking questions would damage the product. If Switzerland were a company, this was the moment it discovered its most profitable but dangerous feature: radical discretion. For decades, the model was untouchable. Governments complained, activists protested, but the system held until the world changed. After the Cold War, and especially after 9/11, silence stopped looking like neutrality. It started looking like complicity. The same trust that built Switzerland's fortune was now being questioned. And once trust becomes political, it is no longer fully under your control. Swiss banking survived, but it was no longer invisible. And invisibility had always been the point. Switzerland never tried to be big. It tried to be exact. With a small population and limited land, mass production was never an option. So Switzerland specialized in things that punish mistakes, watches that cannot be rushed, machines that cannot fail, pharmaceuticals where errors cost lives. This was not coincidence. Precision rewards discipline, and discipline was already part of the culture. Swiss companies learned to compete, not on volume, but on tolerance. How small can the margin of error be? How long can the product last? How quietly can it do its job? The result was an economy built on niches, so specific, so technical, that competition almost disappears. You don't buy Swiss products because they're cheap. You buy them because replacing them is risky. This model does something powerful. It protects wages. High-skill industries justify high pay. High pay supports social stability, and stability feeds back into trust. Even Switzerland's export profile reflects this logic. Low weight, high value, easy to ship, hard to replicate. If Switzerland were a company, this would be its operating strategy. Avoid scale wars, dominate narrow markets, charge for reliability. But precision has a limit. It works only as long as the world values quality over speed, and that assumption is now being tested because the global economy is moving faster, cheaper, and less patient, and Switzerland is about to face a question it has avoided for centuries. What happens when being careful is no longer enough? Switzerland has almost no natural resources, no oil fields, no vast farmland, no access to the sea. By every traditional metric of power, it should have failed. Instead, it removed itself from the competition entirely. While empires expanded outward, Switzerland turned inward. It invested in people because there was nothing else to extract. Education became infrastructure. Skills replaced raw materials. And because Switzerland never built an empire, it never had to pay for one. No colonies to police, no distant wars to finance, no moral debts that compound across generations. That absence became an advantage. Switzerland could stay small without being irrelevant. It didn't need dominance, it needed usefulness. If Switzerland were a company, this would be its capital allocation strategy. Minimize external risk, maximize internal resilience. Even its military reflected this logic. Not an army designed to project power, but one designed to make invasion expensive, defensive, distributed, prepared. Switzerland didn't try to scare the world. It made the world disinterested in attacking it. And that allowed the country to do something rare. Focus on long-term planning in a short-term world, but there is a cost to never choosing sides. Because when everyone uses you as neutral ground, they also expect you to absorb their problems. And that pressure is quietly building. Switzerland does not avoid risk. It prices it. Every major decision in the country is built around a single question: what happens if everything goes wrong? Banks hold more capital than required. Governments run persistent surpluses. Infrastructure is designed to fail slowly, not suddenly. Even fear is engineered. Civil defense bunkers outnumber citizens. Emergency plans are rehearsed, not assumed. Redundancy is treated as efficiency. This is not paranoia. It is institutional memory. Switzerland watched empires collapse because they optimized for good times, so it optimized for bad ones. During world wars, its economy stayed functional. During financial crises, its currency is strengthened. During global panic, capital flowed in. Risk management became a competitive advantage. If Switzerland were a company, this would be its internal culture. Plan for the downside first. Growth is optional. Survival is not. But this strategy has consequences. Extreme caution slows innovation. Consensus delays decisions. And protecting the system can become more important than adapting it. In a world defined by shocks, Switzerland mastered defense. But the next era may not reward defense alone, because the biggest risks ahead are not sudden. They are gradual, and gradual threats are the hardest ones to hedge against. For most of its history, Switzerland survived by staying quiet. But the modern world doesn't tolerate silence, Global finance is now monitored, data is shared, reputation travels instantly. The very things that once protected Switzerland are now under pressure. Bank secrecy has been dismantled piece by piece. International agreements force transparency. Foreign governments demand access, not because Switzerland failed, but because it succeeded too well. When too much money passes through one system, everyone wants a say in how it works. Neutrality is also harder to maintain. Economic sanctions blur moral lines. Staying neutral can look like choosing a side, and global conflicts now move faster than diplomacy. Even inside the country, the model is being questioned. Younger generations ask different questions. Why protect old industries? Why move so slowly? Why prioritize stability over opportunity? If Switzerland were a company, this would be the moment investors grow uneasy. The fundamentals are strong, but the growth story is unclear because trust in the modern era is no longer built on silence, it's built on visibility. And visibility changes everything. The challenge for Switzerland is not whether it can survive this shift, it's whether it can adapt without destroying the one thing that made it valuable in the first place. The next era will not reward the same skills that built Switzerland. Artificial intelligence accelerates decision-making. Supply chains are shortening. Politics is becoming local again. Speed is replacing patience, and that is a problem for a system designed to move carefully. Switzerland's strengths still matter. High-trust institutions, deep technical expertise, a culture that values accuracy over hype. These qualities translate well too. AI, safety, biotech, regulation, precision manufacturing, and secure data infrastructure. But they also come with friction. AI favors iteration. Startups favor risk. Global talent favors momentum. And Switzerland is not known for moving fast. If Switzerland were a company, this would be its strategic dilemma: double down on being the safest platform in an unstable world, or loosen control to stay relevant in a faster one. Both options carry risk. Move too slowly and innovation happens elsewhere. Move too quickly and the trust premium erodes. The future will not be decided by how much Switzerland invents. It will be decided by how carefully it chooses what not to protect anymore. Because in the next global cycle, stability alone may not be enough. Switzerland never tried to lead the world, it let the world come to it. By refusing to rush, refusing to shout, and refusing to choose sides, it built something most countries never do: a reputation that outlives crises. If Switzerland were a company, it wouldn't dominate headlines, it wouldn't chase growth at all costs, but when everything feels unstable, it's the company everyone calls. Because trust, once earned, travels quietly. And when trust disappears elsewhere, it doesn't vanish, it migrates to systems that feel predictable, to rules that feel fair, to places that don't panic. That is Switzerland's real product. Not secrecy, not banking, not precision, but restraint. The question now is whether restraint can survive. In a world that rewards speed, visibility, and noise, and that question is not just Switzerland's. It belongs to every country, every institution, and every individual trying to decide what is worth protecting when everything is changing. If you see countries not as flags, but as companies, with strategies, risks, and trade-offs, then this story doesn't end here. It continues with the next country. If this way of seeing the world makes sense to you, you'll understand the next episode even better.